Hello, and welcome back to Baby Elias's stories. We now return to The Inugami Curse by Seishi Yokomizo. Translated by Yumiko Yamazaki. The Koto String. The chirping of the birds Tamayo had been listening to in her dream slowly became reality, and she at last began to come out of her deep sleep. Trying to force away the suffocating pressure that lay over her, she had unconsciously extended her hands to raise herself when she finally woke up. Even then, she could not immediately comprehend her situation, and she stared blankly ahead for a while. She had a dull headache, and her joints were stiff. It was an effort just to get up, not like a normal morning at all. She thought that perhaps she was ill. As her thoughts wandered thus, she suddenly remembered what had taken place in the middle of the lake. The careening motorboat being caught in Tomo's arms, and then that wet handkerchief over her nose. After that, everything was a blank. Tamayo sprang upright in her bed. She just barely kept herself from screaming. The scream she was able to stifle, but she could not stop her body from shaking. She felt her skin growing hot, then cold. She pulled her pajamas tight around her and, without moving a muscle, took stock of her condition. Weren't these proof? The headache, the stiffness? Weren't these proof that she had been violated? She quivered with violent rage. After the rage came an indescribable sorrow and despair that welled forth from within her. Tamayo sat immobile on her bed, staring straight ahead, feeling in her despair a sudden darkness descend around her. Eventually, however, Tamayo noticed that she was in her own bedroom, had been lying in her own bed, and was wearing her own pajamas. How could that be? Had Tomo carried her into this room to disgrace her? No, that was unthinkable. Then, had he brought her back here after he had done his evil deed? Tamayo's heart was about to burst with fresh sorrow and wrath. Just then, she heard a slight noise on the other side of the door. Tamayo hurriedly wrapped a blanket around her chest and asked sharply, "Who is it?" There was no immediate reply, so she asked once more, "Who's there?" "Sorry, Missy. I was just worried about how you're feeling." It was Monkey's voice. His tone was as naive and direct as ever, but was filled with gentle concern. Tamayo could not answer him at once. Did Monkey know? Did he know that she might have been subjected by Tomo to the worst indignity a woman could endure? "I'm all right. Everything's fine." "That's good. By the way, Missy, there's something I really want you to see. Yeah, I think you should see it as soon as possible. The sooner you see it, the sooner it'll put your mind at ease." "What is it?" "A scrap of paper. A little bitty scrap of paper." "And this scrap of paper will put my mind at ease." "That's right, Missy." Tamayo thought for a while. Then slide it under the door, she said. She did not want to see anyone yet. She did not want anyone, not even Monkey, to see her face. Okay, I'll do that. Once you see it, you'll feel better. I'll talk to you about it when you've had a chance to settle down a bit. But you lie down and rest real quiet like for now, okay? He spoke almost like a nursemaid, in gentle, comforting tones. She felt tears rise to her eyes. Monkey, what time is it? A little past 10. Yes, I know, but... As Tamayo murmured hastily, gazing at the clock by her bedside, Monkey finally seemed to realize what she meant. Oh, I'm sorry, miss. Of course, you've got no idea when it is. It's the next day. It's been the night, and now it's past 10 in the morning. Understand? Yes, I understand. I'll slide this scrap of paper under the door so you read it and rest some more, okay? I'll be leaving now 'cause the chief is calling for me. After waiting for Monkey's footsteps to recede into the corridor and to grow gradually fainter, Tamayo slid out of bed. She could see a corner of the piece of paper sticking out from beneath the door. She took it and returned to her bed. It was a small scrap of paper that seemed to have been torn from a pocket notebook, and it had some writing on it that was difficult to decipher. She turned on the lamp by her bed. The writer must have tried to disguise his hand, for the letters were strangely stiff and awkward. As she read the words, Tamayo felt her whole body grow cold. But then, the next instant, glowing hot. Tomo did not succeed. I bear witness to the fact that Tamayo remains as pure and untouched as before. The man in the shadows. Could it really be true? Who was this man in the shadows? More than that, why did Monkey have this scrap of paper? Monkey! Monkey! Tamayo cried out at once, but by then he was no longer there to answer. After pondering the situation for a while, she slid out of bed and hurriedly changed into her clothes. She was still a little woozy, but was not about to let that get in her way, for she had to be liberated from this doubt, this horrible doubt, without any delay. Putting on her clothes and quickly making herself presentable, Tamayo stepped out into the corridor in search of Monkey, but he was nowhere to be seen. That's right, she remembered. He said something about the chief calling him. As she made her way down the corridor toward the main part of the villa, she saw the door to the living room open and a crowd of people inside. Tamayo! It was Sayoko who first spotted her and came rushing out of the room. I heard you weren't feeling well. Are you all right? You look pale. Sayoko looked ill herself. Yes, thank you, Sayoko. Tamayo peered into the living room and frowned. Has something happened again? Inside, she could see Chief Tachibana and Kindaichi, as well as the other members of the Inugami Clan. Tomo's absence and the strangely stiff expression she saw on Monkey's face made her apprehensive. Well, yes, maybe. Sayoko looked at Tamayo's face with questioning eyes. Tomo hasn't been seen since last night. Tamayo blushed. Could it be that Sayoko knew about yesterday and was trying to coax information out of her? And Aunt Umeko and Uncle Kokichi were very worried, so they phoned the chief thinking that perhaps something strange might have happened again. Poor Sayoko's face was contorted with anguish. it was probably not his parents, but indeed Sayoko herself who was most concerned about Tomo's disappearance. Just then, a smiling Chief Tachibana came out of the room. Miss Tamayo, I heard that you weren't feeling well. Are you all right? Yes, thank you. If you feel up to it, won't you come in? There's something we need your help with. Tamayo looked at the chief's face, and then turned her gaze toward Monkey inside the room. He was glaring at her angrily. Tamayo looked at Chief Tachibana and asked, falteringly, What's this all about? Come in, please, come in. Unable to refuse, Tamayo entered the room and seated herself on the chair indicated by the chief. As she did, Sayoko anxiously drew near and stood beside her. Tomo's parents, Takeko and Toranosuke, Matsuko and Kiyo were all seated around the room, while Kindaichi stood a bit apart, nonchalantly observing everyone. Miss Tamayo, we need your help. As you've no doubt heard from Miss Sayoko, Mr. Tomo hasn't been seen since last night. It may be nothing to worry about, but things being as they are, his parents are extremely concerned and have asked us to find him as quickly as possible. And Tachibana stared at Tamayo's face with searching eyes. And after making several inquiries, we have obtained information from the other servants that Monkey here might know where he is. So, we've been questioning him, but he refuses to speak, saying that since it concerns you as well, he will not say anything unless he has your permission. And so, we'd like you to help by asking Monkey to tell us everything. Tamayo felt her blood run cold, finally realizing what she had walked into. The chief did not know anything. It was because he did not know that he could make such a request so mercilessly without any compunction. Compunction. Anxiety arising from awareness of guilt. Compunction. Distress of mind over unanticipated action or result. Compunction. It was because he did not know that he could make such a request so mercilessly without any compunction. Tamayo closed her eyes in agony, but just then she felt someone grasp her arm strongly. Lifting her eyes, she saw Sayoko, eyes brimming with tears, gazing at her in entreaty. Entreaty, an act of entreating, a plea. Entreat, to plead with especially in order to persuade. To plead with especially in order to persuade. Ask urgently. Entreat, to make an earnest request. Entreat, plead. Lifting her eyes, she saw Sayoko, eyes brimming with tears, gazing at her in entreaty. Unconsciously, Tamayo squeezed the note from the man in the shadows more tightly in her hand. Yes, in fact, I wanted to ask Monkey about that too. Before we hear Monkey's story though, I'd like you to hear mine first. Unless you do, the facts may be out of sequence and difficult to understand. Tamayo's cheeks were deathly pale, and the hands she had placed on her lap trembled slightly. Despite this, she related her previous day's experiences in the middle of the lake without faltering. Besides, there was not that much to tell. When Tamayo had finished her tale, everyone looked at her, stunned, Umeko and Kokichi, Tomo's parents, exchanged glances. Chief Tachibana, having realized his mistake in forcing this cruel tale out of Tamayo, kept coughing awkwardly. Sayoko, meanwhile, grasped Tamayo's hand, her eyes wide with emotion. Tamayo squeezed her hand in return and went on. So, I don't know anything that happened after I got in the motorboat, where Tomo took me or what he did. Where Tomo took me or what he did. She hesitated a moment, but again gathered her courage. I have no recollection of anything, but when I woke up just now, I was lying on my own bed. Moreover, it seems that Monkey knows how I got there. So I, more than anyone else in this room, want to hear Monkey's story. I want to know what Tomo did to me. Although she tried her best to calm herself, Tamayo felt an irrepressible rage burn forth within her like a blue-white flame. Her voice quavered and rose shrilly. Sayoko still held her hand sadly. All right, Monkey, tell me. There's no reason to hesitate. I want you to tell me all you know, no matter how terrible it is. It's better that I know for sure right now rather than find out later so I can be prepared. Oh, Missy, did you look at the scrap of paper? Yes, I did. I'd like to hear about this piece of paper too. Monkey licked his lips nervously and began to talk in his muttering tone about the previous day. Unused to speaking much at all, he could not tell his tale smoothly. Chief Tachibana and Tamayo had to guide him on at times with helpful remarks. According to Monkey, at around 4 o'clock the previous afternoon, he had received an anonymous phone call telling him of Tamayo's whereabouts. Monkey did not really understand what the caller was talking about, but he said that Monkey should not make a big commotion because that would embarrass Tamayo, and that he should go to her quietly without telling anyone. After the caller had said what he wanted to say, he hung up. So, you went to find Miss Tamayo? Yeah, he said not to tell anybody, so I went real quiet on the boat. And you found her in the empty house in Toyohata village, just like the caller had said? Yeah. Can you be more specific about what you found there? Was Mr. Tomo no longer there? Missy was lying on the bed. I thought for sure she was dead. She looked so pale. But I found out right away she wasn't dead. She had just breathed in some drug that made her sleep. I could smell it real strong around her nose and mouth. But Tomo? What happened to Tomo? Omeko's hysterical voice pierced the quiet of the room. At her question, Monkey whirled around and glared at her with blazing eyes. Tomo? You mean that bastard? Oh, yeah, that bastard was there too, in the same room. But he couldn't do anything. He'd been stripped half naked and tied to a chair with a rope over and over. What's more, he was gagged. Never seen such a pitiful sight. Did you tie him up, Monkey? Kindaichi interjected calmly. Nope, not me. Not me. Probably that man in the shadows who telephoned me. The man in the shadows? Tachibana frowned. Who's that? Missy, you got that scrap of paper? Tamayo handed the piece of paper to the chief without a word. Tachibana read it, raised his eyebrows in wonder, and handed it to Kindaichi. Kindaichi too contorted his face. Monkey, where did you find this piece of paper? It was pinned to the front of Missy's jacket with a safety pin. I see. Chief, you'd better preserve this evidence carefully. Yes, I'll take it for now anyhow. Tucking away the piece of paper in his pocket, Tachibana continued. So, what did you do after that, monkey? Did you bring Miss Tamayo back home? Yeah, oh yeah. I went by rowboat but came back by motorboat. I figured it'd serve the bastard right if I took his boat. And Tomo? What about Tomo? Omeko screeched again. Tomo? He's probably still in that room. It wasn't my job to take him home. Monkey sneered. Still bound and gagged? Omeko screamed. Oh yeah, bound and gagged, and stripped half naked too. I felt he was too filthy even to talk to, so I didn't pay him any attention. Struggling and groaning like that? No. Wait, that ain't exactly right. I did pay attention to him. I gave him a good whack right in the face as I was going out. He said with a peal of laughter. Umeko jumped up and screamed in insane frenzy. Somebody go! Go and help him! My baby! He's going to freeze to death! Soon thereafter, a motorboat could be seen exiting the sluice gate of the Inugami estate onto Lake Nasu. Inside were Chief Tachibana, Kindaichi, Tomo's father Kokichi, and Monkey as guide. Sayoko too had insisted that she go along, and so she accompanied them. When they arrived at the delta of Toyohata village, they saw the rowboat Monkey had left the day before still floating among the reeds. From that, too, it seemed certain that Tomo was still in the empty house. Yes, Tomo was indeed inside the empty house. As the group, led by Monkey, entered the barren bedroom, they saw Tomo, naked from the waist up, head hanging down on his chest, still gagged and bound to the chair with his hands tied behind him. Ha! The bastard fainted! I'm sure he's learned his lesson now. Monkey spat out hastily. Kokichi ran up to Tomo, hurriedly removed his gag, and raised his son's face. At that moment, though, he released Tomo's head with a cry, so that it once again dropped forward as if the neck were broken. Then they saw it. Something strange wound around Tomo's neck. It was a Koto string. The string had been wound around Tomo's neck 3 times and buried deep in the flesh, making horrible bruises. There was a jarring scream, "Ah!" and someone collapsed to the floor. It was Sayoko. The Unfortunate Sayoko. A Koto string. Yes, a Koto string. The Nasu police had been summoned to the scene, and as Kindaichi blankly watched them taking photographs with great commotion, a terrifying idea began to whirl around in his head. When Take had been killed, his head severed from his body and substituted for that of a chrysanthemum doll, Kindaichi had agonized because he did not understand the significance of that act. Now, however, seeing a Koto string wound around the neck of the second body, a terrible suspicion flashed through his mind like lightning. Yokikoto kiku, axe, zither, and chrysanthemum. With the Koto string having been found around Tomo's neck, 2 of the 3 Inugami heirlooms were now seemingly connected with the murders. Was there really some connection? Of course there was. There had to be. Just the one murder with the chrysanthemum doll could be attributed to chance, but the Koto being involved in a second murder was too much to be coincidence. These murders must be intimately connected with the Inugami motto and heirlooms, and the culprit was deliberately flaunting that connection in their faces. As Kindaichi's thoughts wandered thus, his body grew as cold as ice with a fresh terror. Since the chrysanthemum and zither had already been used, would the axe be next? And if so, who would be the victim? He vividly saw the figure of the masked Kyo in his mind's eye, for since the chrysanthemum or kiku had been used for take and the zither or koto for tomo, then it seemed only natural that the axe or yoki was meant for the one remaining cousin. Reaching that conclusion, Kindaichi felt his flesh crawl, for he also remembered who would benefit most if all 3 men were dead. Just as the police photographers, acting on Chief Tachibana's orders, had finished photographing Tomo's body from every angle, Kusada, the medical examiner, came running into the room. "Chief, another one?" "Hello, doctor. It's bad. I wish we didn't have to deal with cases like this. Shall I untie him?" "No, hold on a minute." Kasuda carefully examined the body, still lashed to the chair, and when finished, turned to Tachibana. "You can untie him now. Have you taken photographs?" "Yes, we have. Kawada, untie the rope," the chief called to one of his detectives. "Wait, just a moment, please." It was Kindaichi now who hastily stopped him. "Chief, could you call Monkey in here? I want to check something again before you untie him." Summoned by one of the detectives, Monkey appeared. His face was rigid with tension. "Monkey, I want to ask you one more time, just to make sure. Are you certain that when you came here yesterday, Tomo was bound to this chair?" Monkey nodded grimly. "And he was definitely alive at that time?" "Oh, yeah." "Did he say anything?" "Yeah, he was trying to, but since he was gagged and all, he couldn't really talk." "You didn't even take off the gag?" Monkey scowled angrily at Kindaichi, but immediately averted his eyes, saying, "Of course. If I'd known that this was going to happen, I'd have taken off his gag and untied him too. But back then, I was just fuming mad." "So you hit him?" Monkey nodded grimly again, probably now regretting how he had acted. "Okay, I understand. What time was it when you left this place with Miss Tamayo?" "About 4:30, or maybe closer to 5. It was already dark outside." "So, between about 4:30 and 5, Tomo was still alive. I don't suppose you killed him as a parting shot?" "What? No, of course not. I just gave him a good whack." Monkey heatedly denied the accusation. Kindaichi calmed him down. "One last question. Was Tomo exactly in this position, in this state, on the chair when you left him? Look at the knot, for example." "Can't really say. I didn't look at him from up close or anything, so I don't know about the knot, but I think he looked about the same." "Okay, thank you. You can go now. We'll call you if we need you again." Waiting until Monkey had left, Kindaichi turned toward Tachibana. Chief, take a look. I want you to look at this closely before we untie the rope. See how there are abrasions all over Tomo's upper torso. They were clearly made by the rope. For there to be this many abrasions, the rope must have been quite loose. But look at this. Kindaichi forced his finger in under the rope that bound Tomo. The rope is biting into the flesh so tightly, so firmly, that it's difficult to even get a finger in. So, how could these abrasions have been made? Tachibana's eyes widened in wonder. Mr. Kindaichi, what does this mean? I don't know, Chief. I'm puzzled myself. Kindaichi scratched his head absent-mindedly. It's a very odd discrepancy. The abrasions covering his upper torso and the tightness of the rope, and I think we should keep it in mind. Anyway, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Please, go ahead and untie him. The rope was untied, and Tomo's corpse was laid out on a cot. As Kusuda examined the body, a detective popped his head into the room. Chief! Yes, what is it? There's something I'd like you to see. All right, Kawada, you stay here and help the doctor if he needs anything. And by the way, doctor. Yes? There's a lady in the other room who's fainted. Could you see to her when you've finished over here? It's the Inugami's Sayoko. With Kindaichi tagging along after the chief, the detective led them into the dressing room adjoining the bathroom next to the kitchen. There, on the wooden floor, they were surprised to find a small clay cooking stove, a pan, a pot for cooking rice, a teapot, and a cardboard box half full of charcoal. Obviously, someone had been cooking there recently. You know, Chief, said the detective, looking at the two men. We checked this house right after Take's murder to see if that repatriated soldier who was staying at the Kashiwaya Inn might be hiding here. I'm absolutely certain there was nothing like this here then. So if someone did sneak into this house, it had to be after we checked it. I see. Happily scratching his head, Kindaichi said. Perhaps he thought this would be the safest place to hide since the police had already searched it once. Yes, exactly. That's what I thought too. But if so, that means this guy knew we had searched it. How could he have known that? Yes, detective. That's what I find extremely interesting. Perhaps information on everything you police are doing is somehow being passed on to him. Kindaichi seemed to be enjoying himself tremendously, but Tachibana, in contrast, looked rather cross and countered. What do you mean, Mr. Kindaichi? You seem to be assuming that the person who was here is the man we're looking for. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, does it? It could have been some vagrant. But Chief, there's more. The detective opened the door to the bathroom. Look! Whoever was hiding here washed his food and cooking utensils in the bathroom. He could have done the cooking here too, but he didn't because someone could have seen the fire from outside. Same with the kitchen. That's why he did the cooking in the dressing room, because it can't be seen from the outside. What's more, look here, in the bathroom. There was no need for the detective to continue. On the white tile covered with scattered bits of greens was a large footprint. Without question, the impression of a combat boot, so sharp and clear as to have been made with a stamp. Chief Tachibana uttered a low groan in spite of himself. Of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that because he's wearing combat boots, it's the man we're looking for. But judging from the circumstances... We've certainly moved a step closer to that probability. Nishimoto, be sure and make an impression of this print. Turning back toward Kindaichi, Chief Tachibana stared. Chief Tachibana started talking forcefully, irate. So, Mr. Kindaichi, what do we have? That Tomo brought Tamayo here without knowing this repatriated soldier was hiding here, that he and Tomo fought, and that Tomo ended up being bound to the chair. After tying Tomo up, the man who was hiding here phoned Monkey and told him Tamayo was in this house. Then Monkey came, but he just took Tamayo home and left Tomo tied to the chair. So that's what we have up to now. But if that's so, said the chief with emphasis, then who killed Tomo? Did the repatriated soldier return after Monkey had left and strangled him? Kindaichi scratched his head lightly, all around. Chief, I was just thinking the same thing. If that man was going to kill Tomo, why didn't he do so before calling Monkey? He would have known that once he told Monkey, this house was bound to become a focus of attention. Fortunately or unfortunately, Monkey being the way he is, he didn't tell anyone until this morning. But the man who was hiding here certainly couldn't be sure of that. In that case, it would have been extremely risky for him to return to this house after he had told Monkey about it. And besides, no, I shouldn't say anything rash about knowing the time of death. No, I shouldn't say anything rash without knowing the time of death. Tachibana stood thinking in silence, but soon turned to his detective and asked, Nishimoto, was there anything else? Yes, sir. Just one more thing. I'd like you to take a look at the shed. The shed, which stood just outside the kitchen door, was a structure with a floor space of about 7 square meters. In one corner of the earthen-floored room, filled high with various kinds of junk, was a large pile of fresh straw. Kindaichi and Tachibana grew wide-eyed at the sight. He must have been sleeping here. Yes, it's just after the harvest, so there are straw stacks everywhere. Take a little from this one and a little from that one, and no one's the wiser. And besides, said the detective, stomping on the straw, it's too deep and thick. It's bound to be a lot warmer than any cheap, thin quilt. I see. Tachibana looked abstractedly at the straw bed. But I wonder if this really means unmistakably that someone was hiding here. I don't suppose this could all be a sham. A sham? Hearing his detective retort in surprise, Tachibana began to speak in an angry tone of voice. You know, Mr. Kindaichi, we really don't know anything certain about what happened here yesterday. Sure, we've heard stories from Tamayo and Monkey that sound plausible. But who's to say those stories are true? According to Tamayo, Tomo used something like chloroform on her and brought her to this house. But maybe, just a maybe, couldn't it have been Tamayo who seduced Tomo and tricked him into coming here? Monkey says he got a call from an anonymous caller and then came here. But maybe that's a lie, and in fact, he was here first, lying in wait for Tomo. Mr. Kindaichi, I'm sure you remember that Monkey has old Koto strings for repairing his fishing nets. Detective Nishimoto looked in astonishment at the chief's face. Then, Chief, you think that all these pieces of evidence we found were manufactured and that Tamayo and Monkey conspired to kill Tomo? No, I am not saying that. I'm just saying that it's not out of the question. And that footprint too. It seems too clear and sharp, as if it were made with a stamp of some kind. But, well, never mind. You go ahead and investigate more fully based on your own line of thinking. You go ahead and investigate more fully based on your own line of thinking. Mr. Kindaichi, Dr. Kusada should be about finished by now. Shall we go? When the two men returned to the room on the second floor, the doctor was gone, and only the detective was keeping watch over the corpse. Kawada, where's Dr. Kusuda? He went to see about the lady in the other room. Oh, right. And what about the results of the post-mortem? He said that he would present an in-depth report after the autopsy. But to give you the main points, said the detective, looking at his pocket notebook. The time elapsed since death is approximately 17 to 18 hours. Therefore, counting back, that means the time of death was between 8 and 9 last night. Between 8 and 9 last night. Chief Tachibana and Kindaichi instinctively exchanged glances. According to Monkey, he left this house sometime between 4:30 and 5 in the afternoon. If so, it appeared that Tomo had remained alive and tied to this chair for 3 or 4 hours after Monkey had left. The detective continued, comparing the expressions on the two men's faces. Yes, sir, between 8 and 9 last night, but there's something else that's strange. Dr. Kusuda says that the Koto String wound around the victim's neck was placed there after he was dead, and that he was actually strangled with something thicker, like a rope of some kind. What? Chief Tachibana literally jumped in surprise, but just then, as if in response to his voice, there was a woman's shriek from another room. Kindaichi and the chief looked at each other, aghast. They knew it was Sayoko, but they were taken aback by the pathetic, heart-rending sound. Chief, let's go see. Something has happened. Sayoko was being tended to by Monkey and Kokichi in the room 3 doors down the hallway. The insistent Kindaichi and Chief Tachibana stepped inside the room. However, they saw a sight that stopped them dead in their tracks. Sayoko, restrained on both sides by Monkey and Kokichi, with a face that showed she was no longer sane, with eyes slanted sharply upward and the muscles of her cheeks twitching horribly. Her mad strength was such that she would sometimes nearly hurl off even the powerful Monkey. Monkey, hold her tight. I'm going to give her another shot. I think one more shall do the trick, the doctor said, as he gave her the last of several injections. They heard 3 more pathetic, gut-wrenching wails from Sayoko's lips. But then the drug must have taken effect, for she gradually became quiet until, finally, she lay sleeping like a baby against Monkey's chest. Poor girl, Kusuda muttered sadly as he put away his syringe. Her nerves must have simply snapped. I just hope it's a transient episode. The words alarmed Tachibana. Doctor, then you mean there's a danger of insanity? I can't say anything for sure. The shock was just too great. Kusuda looked back and forth at the chief and Kindaichi. Chief, he said after a pause, his face grave. She's pregnant. 3 months pregnant.